Now, shall we begin?
All right.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
This is going to be quite the ride.
And hello everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this week. It is going to be an interesting week this week. It's going to be a little professional sounding at the end, but we're not going to waste any time. We're going to go right into it. Let's get right to it. Let's start off with our movie news items of the week. There's going to be no trailer talk this week. There are trailers this week that dropped. They're all going to be down below, as always, in the description/show notes area if you want to go check them out. They're just, none of the trailers this week really sparked any real interest with me. I mean, they were good. They were decent trailers, but we're just going to skip over the trailers that came out this week, and we're going to move right forward, like I said, to the movie news items of the week. And we're going to start off like we always do with some quick fire. So the first quick fire news item is Ben Affleck is stepping back behind the camera for a drama film based on a true story titled King Leopold's Ghost. The film is based on a non-fiction book of the same name and is based on the legacy of the Belgian King Leopold II in the 1800s. So for those that don't know, here are basically the Cliff Notes version. King Leopold II became wealthy by privately buying the Congo Free State, setting up a mercenary army who pretty much plundered the region for anything and anyone that they wanted. Of course, eventually the people fought back as they always do with this kind of tyranny, so there was that. Now the film will center on three people leading the fight back, and that is an Irish spy, an English journalist, and an African American missionary. The film will be written by Fahad Safina, who was one of the writers on Apocalypto and the Starz series Boss. The book was already adapted in 2006 in a documentary form, so if you want to go check that out, you can. And originally, Ben Affleck's team considered developing the book in a limited series, but chose the film route in the end. Now, Affleck himself does have some connection to African justice, something I didn't even know about until I read this movie news item. He founded the Eastern Congo Initiative, which is a group that works with residents of the area to further social economic progress. So it's going to be hitting a little close to home for Ben Affleck, which is really cool. So there is that quick fire news item. The second quick fire movie news item, and the last one that we're going to be talking about, is that Mission Impossible 7 has added Pom Klementieff. I always mispronounce her last name. I'm pretty sure that's not how she pronounces it. I'm pretty sure that's not how it's pronounced. But she is Mantis in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So from this point forward, I'm just going to call her Mantis. The news comes from writer-director Christopher McQuarrie, who jokingly asked her, how do you spell femme fatale on Twitter? And of course, she responded by mischief accepted. So it looks like she will be playing one of potentially many villains in the movie. Nothing is known about the plot of the movie or the movie itself. We do know that the movie will be shooting back to back with Mission Impossible 8. They will be releasing those movies back to back in the following year, in the years to come, sooner rather than later than you think. But earlier this year, it was also confirmed that Haley Atwell has joined the cast. There was nothing of her mentioned in some of the reports, or in some reports that I read. Some other reports did mention her, but she has already joined the film. Of course, Tom Cruise will be back as Ethan Hunt, and we can assume that people like Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, and Rebecca Ferguson will also return as well. Mission Impossible 7 will open on July 23rd, 2021, so they're most likely going to start they're definitely going to start filming next year if they want to reach that release date, although McQuarrie is known for a pretty quick turnaround. But they're filming both of them back to back, so I assume they're going to start filming those pretty quickly. And Mission Impossible 8, by the way, will open on August 5th, 2022, so there's that. So there you go. Those are your quickfire movie news items. We're going to jump right into the other movie news items of the week, the bigger movie news items of the week. And we're going to start off with one that is not necessarily too surprising. It wasn't necessarily too surprising at first, but been a quick turnaround in just a matter of a couple days, or really one day. So earlier this week, a news item dropped that, again, really wouldn't have been a surprise to no one. But like I said, there's been a little bit of a turnaround since then. So what is that news, in case you've been living under a rock? And that is that Joker 2 is apparently in the works over at Warner Brothers. Now, the fact that there is another Joker movie isn't too surprising. Joker did hit the $1 billion mark recently, and Warner Brothers was like, yeah, we like money, let's make another one. People like Joker, people like the movie, let's go on and watch it. Now, at first, it was reported that co-writer and director Todd Phillips was in talks to return, as was Joaquin Phoenix, and that Phillips would also do another gritty origin story film for another DC character, even insofar as going to Warner Brothers' offices and meeting with the head of Warner Brothers, Toby Emmerich, and asked to take control of a handful of DC characters to again make a more Joker-esque gritty origin stories for other characters, and even walking away with one, and in turn creating a new kind of DC umbrella called DC Dark or something like that, or DC Black as they called it, which was rumored to Joker was going to be the start of that once, if it was successful, and of course it has been. But that was all shot down later in the day when it was announced. This was Wednesday, by the way. And a statement was released saying that DC has a lot on its plate already, and another film like the Joker would take years to pull off. But that wasn't it. Like I said, the next day, Thursday, Phillips came out and doubled down on the report, saying, I believe he spoke with Empire on this, or IndieWire, saying that he met with Emmerich, saying that he never met with Emmerich, I should say, and his supposed deal to direct Joker 2 along with Phoenix isn't necessarily a done deal. So he said a bunch of other stuff, but that's pretty much the gist of what, I'm pretty sure the gist of what you want to know. So that said, and of course, it should be said that Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips, while they were promoting the movie everywhere, they have talked about wanting to do another Joker movie, and they had talked about it when they were filming, and apparently Joaquin Phoenix made like these fake posters for Joker 2 while they were filming the movie, and that Phillips said if the idea came up and there was a good idea and everything lined up, he would come back, and Joaquin Phoenix basically echoed what Phillips said, and if everything lined up and the idea was right, they would come back. So all that said, it's unclear if Joker 2 will actually happen, and again, it's no surprise to no one that it's being even talked about of happening. I don't know if I actually went into what I thought about the Joker in the podcast, or on the podcast, I should say. I'm pretty sure I got my thoughts online about it, but I don't think I actually gave my thoughts here on the podcast. I thought it was good. I thought it was a very, I don't want to say a very well-made movie. I think cinematically, visually, it was very, very well done. Joaquin Phoenix was great in it, and he's pretty much the show. He's pretty much the movie. The movie is on his shoulders. If he doesn't do a good job, then the movie was destined to fail. And Joaquin Phoenix stepped it up, and he gave a great performance as Arthur Fleck. There's been a lot of pieces about Joker and how it handles its themes of the rich versus the poor, and mental disabilities and other disabilities, or just anything you can think of that the movie has. There's been thought pieces on it, and much more betterly expressed that I am fumbling about with. But it's a movie that definitely had a lot of people talking, and it's a movie that is not for everyone. If you still haven't seen Joker, I guess I would recommend it, just so you can see what people are talking about. But if I want to pass at, even if I recommend it to you and you walk out saying you really hated that movie, I want to pass to be like, hey, I told you, you may or may not like it. It is definitely one of those movies where you either leaning towards you like it, or you're leaning towards you don't. There's a very, very thin middle ground for that movie, and I want to say that I am in that very thin middle ground. and I think there's a lot of a good handful of people that are in that middle ground. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't necessarily fully support it. I think concept-wise it was great. Execution-wise, I think it fumbles a little bit. But whether or not I want a sequel to it, I can wholeheartedly tell you I do not want a sequel to the Joker. And that is nothing against Todd Phillips. That is nothing against Joaquin Phoenix. That is nothing against the idea of a more gritty, origin story for other DC characters. But if you're gonna ask me, do I want? And this is not even like everything has to be a sequel or franchise now. No, that's not what I'm even hinting at all. This is just me saying a movie like Joker, when you watch it, it doesn't need a sequel. And the only reason people want a sequel is because they really love that movie. I think there is a very small camp of people who really love the Joker, and then when the news broke out that, hey, there's going to be a sequel to the Joker, I think a lot of them kind of joined everyone else in that, why does everything have to be a sequel? Why does everything have to get a sequel? Why does everything have to be a franchise? Joker does not need a sequel. It is not a movie that needs a sequel. There was nothing in the movie itself that implied we need a sequel to this movie. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Will I go watch a Joker sequel if it ever gets made? Because, again, it's very unclear if Joker 2 will actually get made, because Todd Phillips has said there is no deal for him to come back and direct, and there is no deal on the table yet for him and Joaquin Phoenix to come back either. They like the idea of coming back. They're not saying they're going to come back. So, but Warner Brothers is developing one. They're talking about it. There's not even rumblings. They're openly talking about making another one. So, I don't know. I am in the camp of not wanting a Joker sequel, not because I am against movie franchises and big blockbuster sequels or whatever. It is because Joker, the movie that I watched, that everyone watched, obviously a billion people watched it and got enough for it to make $1 billion. The movie itself does not lend for a sequel. It really doesn't. I don't want to see another movie with Arthur Fleck. I really don't. And it's nothing against Joaquin Phillips. I combined the two. It's nothing against Joaquin Phoenix and Todd Phillips. It is just, I don't need a sequel to that character. I don't need to see the character is peaked. What more can you do with that character? And I'm sure there's people online saying, well, you can do this. Like, yeah, of course you can. But do I want to see it? No, I don't want to see it. It is very rare for me to say, from a movie that I watched already and be like, I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel to that. That is very rare for me to say, I do not need a sequel. That's a crappy movie. Joker's not a crappy movie, but let's move on. Let's move on to another big franchise, a potential franchise, or at least another well-known movie that may or may not be getting another movie sequel, however they want to go about it. So Bloody Disgusting, which is a horror movie news website, which is one of my favorites. I'm pretty sure it's the only horror movie news website that I go to. Bloody Disgusting has exclusively reported that the Wes Craven estate has begun work on resurrecting Freddy Krueger, as they are actively taking pitches for a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie, or potential TV series. The move comes after the Craven estate got the rights back 2 months ago. So that's really cool. It's unclear at the moment what the estate's plans are, whether they make another movie or they do something along the lines of a TV series. Bloody Disgusting went on to point out that maybe they can go to HBO Max, which is, of course, the new streaming service for Warner Media, and of course Warner Brothers being part of that Warner Media, it would make sense. And of course, Warner Brothers, they're kind of they're the umbrella company for New Line Cinema, who owned the rights for a long time to Nightmare on Elm Street, but they reverted back, obviously now to the Craven estate after a very long time, mind you. So they kind of pointed that out, that maybe the Craven estate wants to play ball again with Warner Brothers, and they'll allow them to go on the HBO Max series. But regardless of that, I think this is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Now, Bloody Disgusting did point out that the Craven estate could essentially go somewhere else. And they, listed a bunch of companies like Sony, Lionsgate, Universal, and other stuff like that to do a movie. Now, New Line still owns the international rights, but domestically, this is what I probably forgot to mention, that domestically they got the domestic rights back, so they can do a movie here in the States, but they would still have to work with New Line to, release the movie anywhere else. So this is pretty cool. For one, the fact that the rights have reverted back to the Craven estate is a long time coming, because there's a lot of other. There's another big series like this that the rights are in limbo and up in the air, and that is Friday the 13th. If you don't know about the Friday the 13th rights issue, I highly recommend you go look it up, because it is a shit show over there with what they're doing, and the fact that they don't still have a concrete answer on who owns the rights to the Friday the 13th series is ridiculous. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have another Friday the 13th movie, because it's a right issue. So there is that. As for Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, there was that reboot, or that remake, I should say, that came out a handful of years ago. That is not very good, but it came out. But this is interesting. I think it's really cool. Obviously, it's still very early in everything, but I think that if they want to do another Nightmare on Elm Street movie, I'd be on board. Especially if they get a good backing behind them, like if they wanted to do Blumhouse, if they wanted to go to Blumhouse, I think that'd be pretty great. And I know of saying, Blumhouse in the same conversation as a Nightmare on Elm Street, you'd be like, oh, so you're talking about a Freddy versus Michael movie? No. I mean, I'd go watch that. I mean, let's be honest, I'd go watch that. But no, that's not what I'm talking about. And Bloody Disgusting, by the way, they have a good track record. They were the ones that talked about, speaking of Halloween, they were the ones that exclusively reported that the Halloween franchise was going to go over to Blumhouse, and that they worked out a deal with Miramax and with John Carpenter and everyone. They also were the ones that broke that there was going to be a new Screams movie going to come out through Spyglass and that whole ordeal. They also broke the news. They've been breaking the news on a lot of stuff. So if you want a horror movie fix, and we usually don't talk about horror movies too much on the podcast, and mainly because there's just not too much to talk about. We do talk about the trailers that come out. And that is a mistake on my end, really. But usually, the big outlets like Variety and Hollywood Reporter, they usually talk about horror movies. And that's usually where I get my news, and I always forget about going to, Blood Disgusting and stuff like that. So I promise, I'll start incorporating more horror movie stuff. But it's one of those genres that's still kind of looked down upon, which is kind of sad. Although, depending on who you ask in Hollywood, the superhero movies, or the quote-unquote Marvel movies, are the ones that are on the lower totem pole. But that's not what we're going to talk about. Let's move on to the next movie news item. The Star Trek franchise will continue on the big screen, as FX's series creator for Fargo and Legion, Noah Hawley, has been hired to write and direct the next installment of the long-running series. Plot details are currently unknown, but sources told Variety that the movie is expected to bring back Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban, of course, amongst many others probably. The fourth film in the J.J. Abrams produced series tried to get going last year, and there was that whole thing with Chris Hemsworth coming back and joining the cast to reprise his role as Captain Kirk's father. However, the film ended up being shelved due to deals not being able deals. Why is it so hard to speak? Due to deals not being able to be reached. The fourth film will reportedly have a different plot, so there's no word yet on if they will even try to get Hemsworth back on board, or if they're just going to, again, completely have a brand new plot altogether. Now, it should be noted that this is a separate Star Trek movie than the one that they are working on with Quentin Tarantino, because yes, Paramount is working on 2 different Star Trek movies at the moment. Before Quentin Tarantino started doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there was talks that he would be doing or will be involved in some way, shape, or form with a Star Trek movie, and apparently that's still in the works. So I'm pretty sure Star Trek fans are happy that Star Trek is going to be back on the big screen, but it should be interesting to kind of see how this works out. As for Noah Hawley, I like Legion. I haven't watched the last season at all. It's still sitting on my DVR. But I hear very good things from Fargo. I just actually started watching Fargo recently. I just watched the first episode. It's very good, so I look forward to watching the rest of it. I know that his first foray into films was not very good, or at least that's what I heard. He directed recently Lucy in the Sky with Natalie Portman that came out earlier this year. Was not met with any love whatsoever, really, from a lot of people. So I don't know, kind of, whatever he did to win over Paramount was good enough, but, we can't judge everyone on their first movie. So there is that. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm a fan of the J.J. Abrams produced Star Trek movies. I love the first one. The first one's been on TV recently. I've been watching it almost every time it's on, because I just love it. Into Darkness was alright. It had its moments. A lot of people hate Into Darkness, which is fine, but it had its moments, and Beyond was actually pretty good. I liked Beyond. Had some really cool stuff in there. But alright, let's move on to another big franchise name. The Robocop movie lives. MGM has hired Abe Forsyth, who directed the movie Down Under and Hulu's Little Monsters. If you want to go check that out, that has Lupita Longo in it. Josh Gad's also in there, to write and direct Robocop Returns, which will be a direct sequel to the classic Paul Verhoeven 1987 film that we all love.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Original screenwriters Michael Miner and Ed Neumeier, that's not how you pronounce the last name. I don't even know what the hell I pronounced, but that is not how you pronounce the last name. Are producing the movie. They also wrote the original version of the script, which has a new screenwriter in Justin Rhodes, who just did something similar with the script for Terminator Dark Fate, as in, doing a movie that is a continuation of a movie from before. Now Forsyth will take his pass at the script with Rhodes as well. The idea of a Robocop Returns movie has been in the works for a while. Originally, Neil Blomkamp, the director of District 9 and Elysium and Chappie, was attached to write and direct the movie for a while before he finally dropped out this August, saying that MGM basically didn't want to wait anymore to make the movie, and that seems to be the case now, since again, he dropped out in August. It's now November. They found a director pretty fast. As for Forsyth, I just saw Little Monsters, last month. Not that you would know, because I didn't say anything, but I saw it last month. I actually generally enjoyed it. I think it's a nice little solid zombie movie. Lupita Nyong'o was really great in it, and Josh Gad was also really good. It's a very different Josh Gad than we've seen before. Very good. He's very good in it. But as for the Robocop Returns, obviously, a lot of people love the first movie. The Robocop sequels haven't necessarily been as loved as the other ones. And then, of course, there was that, remake, supposedly. I don't know. It's kind of been erased from my mind because it wasn't very good. But yeah, there is that. And again, this movie's been in the works for a long time. I think Blomkamp's been attached to this thing for I don't even want to say it's felt like he's been attached to this movie for years, maybe 3 years. I think he wanted to do this before he did Chappie. I know around the time he did Chappie, there was talks of him doing this RoboCop Returns movie. So it's been Chappie came out years ago. So I mean, he's been attached for it, for a while. And now they got a Forsyth. So I guess they found a good director for it. I guess. I've only seen Little Monsters, but Little Monsters was a drastic difference from that. I've not seen Down Under. I've just heard the things about it. So reading what Down Under was about and then watching Little Monsters was very, very different. So as for this, again, early stages. So we'll probably be talking about RoboCop Returns. I would say, they'll start really pumping. If MGM really wants this movie made, we'll probably be talking about RoboCop Returns in at least 2 years. I see it coming out within the next 2-3 years for sure, if MGM really wants to get this movie out. Let's get to the final movie news item of the week, which is, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, was going to be the big professional sounding portion of the show for the most part. I'm going to do all the stuff that was reported on, and that's going to sound very professional sounding, and then I'm going to do my bit, which you'll know the drastic difference. But it's a movie news item that, has a lot of people on both sides, and then there's the people in the middle, and I'm teetering toward the middle for the most part. And this is something I didn't even, I want to say I knew about it, but I probably didn't know the degree of it. And considering, the various articles that have come out after this news has come out, it's probably not as big as a deal as I had originally thought, just sitting back and realizing it, but it's still kind of, maybe, depending on how things go on in the film entertainment industry. So, the Wall Street Journal broke the story, and I assume they broke the story because they're the ones that I originally saw the story everyone linked back to. Reported that the Justice Department is moving to remove the Paramount consent decrees, a ruling which for the past 70 years has regulated how movie studios distribute films to movie theaters. So if you're wondering what the hell are the Paramount consent decrees, I'm here to tell you. In the late 1930s, the Justice Department sued the prominent movie studios of the era, and that was Paramount, Universal, Fox, stuff like that. And over the years, they've added Warner Brothers and Sony and a bunch of other ones. Even though Paramount and Sony and Warner Bros. Found a way kind of a little bit around it, not entirely, but they found their ways around it. Anyway, claiming that the studios had too much control over the industry. The government won the case, and in 1948 forced the studios to give up their ownership to theaters across the country, and making several common distribution practices illegal, including block booking, which is bundling multiple films into one theater license. Okay, theater licenses, by the way, it's one theater. Circuit dealing, which is entering into one license that covered all theaters in a theater circuit. Resale price maintenance, setting minimum prices on a movie ticket, which is what movie theaters chains now do anyway, and resale price maintenance. Oh, actually, I just said that. Or granting overboard clearance, which is exclusive film licenses for specific geographical areas. So, for example, if a studio had a new movie coming out, so let's say, let's say Joker. Let's say Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers wants to release the Joker movie, Joker 2. And they knew that Joker 2 was going to bomb and was going to suck very, very hard and make no money for them. The consent decrees made it illegal for them, Warner Brothers, to basically hold the theater hostage by forcing them to show, again, hypothetically, Joker 2, in order to show a film that they knew would make a lot of money. The Zack Snyder director's cut of Justice League, I guess, which is never going to happen, and forget it, we're not going to talk about it on the podcast. It's still illegal, by the way, for a studio to own its own movie theater, although Disney does own El Capitan. I don't know why I said it so Hispanically, in Hollywood, and Universal owns the Universal Theater in Hollywood too, on the Universal Boardwalk, although that is now partially owned by, or not, I don't know if it's partially owned or it's fully owned by AMC. Nonetheless, small exemptions like these have had prior court approval, so they were okay for owning that. And by the way, the El Capitan Theater hosts a lot of Disney releases, so there is that to talk about. What could happen if the Paramount consent decrees is overturned? And it looks like they will be. By the way, I'm recording this little segment of the podcast on Thursday. I think there's going to be a full decision made on Friday, maybe over the weekend. So if a full decision is made, I will intercunt that update after I read everything. So I'm just gonna report it on everything that's going on right now, and if there's an update, I'll report it on it afterwards. So according to so what happens if it's overturned? According to the Wall Street Journal, the Justice Department's antitrust division has, quote, concluded that the rules have outlived their usefulness in a world where the movie business has changed considerably, end quote. To boil it down, the argument is basically that the streaming age that we live in now, obviously look how many streaming sites we have, that the old rules shouldn't necessarily apply to everyone. And while it does seem like a huge change is going to happen, or it doesn't seem like a huge change is going to happen overnight, the department is, quote, seeking a 2-year sunset period for parts of the decree that address block booking and certain movie licensing practices. for theaters in a specific geographical circuit, end quotes. So in case you're wondering, by the way, in all this, you realize I have not mentioned Disney just in the reference to the El Capitan Theater. The Walt Disney Company, when they were not a target of this because they were not a target of the original lawsuit, because at the time they were not a big movie theater company. They are not the Disney that we know now. Now, the arguments have been coming out as to whether or not this is a good idea or not. One of the major arguments is that the entertainment landscape, like we said, been saying right now, has changed so dramatically since the consent decrees were made for the companies being governed by the restrictions that pretty much changed almost beyond recognition. By the way, can you tell that I pre-wrote this? Because I did. So they're really no longer family-dominated movie studios, but rather big businesses with interests in everything from video games and theme parks and streaming services, like we just mentioned. In case you forgot, there are a lot of old theaters that only have one screen, and there's still stuff like that. There's still movie theaters out there that just have one screen, and a lot of them are, of course, family owned, so they have to pick and choose what they show. So back then, obviously, this was a massive deal. Nowadays, it's like, yeah, of course, why are you making a big deal about this? There's like 10 screenings in one movie theater sometimes, or 6, or sometimes 3. So the head of the Justice Department Antitrust Division also said this, saying, quote, "No studio wants to own a movie theater right now," end quote, which is probably honestly true. I mean, there's the whole other side of the argument that comes in, like what if a studio like Amazon or Netflix or A24 wants to buy a movie theater, so their smaller films don't get lost in the bigger shuffle of big blockbusters and stuff like that, and can get a chance where people that only want to watch movies, like smaller movies like that, can go to that movie theater and watch those movies and have the AMCs and the Regals and whatever big theater company you have in your city, have them show off what they have, or if a studio has the gall of all things to hold a movie theater hostage and make them show a bomb that will make neither side make money, the movie theater chain and of course the studio, so they can show a surefire hit. So it's one of those things. When I first read the movie news item, I was like, okay, that's pretty massive, that's pretty huge. And then you kind of sit back and you realize, and you look over everything and you read articles and stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, I can see both sides of the argument. I can see the side of the argument where it's like, yeah, the movie theater or the movie scene has changed a lot. There weren't streaming services 10 years ago. Probably not. I mean, there were probably early beta testing services 10 years ago, maybe, if that. Netflix isn't the Netflix that we know today. Netflix was just, hey, you rent 3 DVDs, we send them to you, you send them back, you get another 3. Amazon was just Amazon. It wasn't, like, oh, we now have Amazon Video. There wasn't streaming services like that before. Now there is. Now we have Disney Plus, and we have HBO Max coming out soon, and we have CBS All Access and Apple TV. Although Apple TV is nothing against Apple, but Apple TV is just there's not a lot of. It's still early for them. Maybe they'll pick it up, but. You have that side of the argument. It's like, yeah, everything's changed. Movie theaters nowadays have multiple screens. They don't have one screen anymore. They don't have 2 screens anymore. They have 6, they have 10, they have 20 sometimes, depending on what theater you're going to, and depending on how big it is. On the other side of the argument, you have, well, what if one day a studio is like, no, that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna hold. I think the word hostage seems very strong worded, and I saw like all the articles that I read use the word hostage, and I was like, yeah, even like when I was rewriting the stuff that I wanted to put on the outline, I was like, I don't want to use the word hostage, but it's like, you know what, screw it, let's just scare some people. What if a studio wanted to be like, no, you're gonna show this movie, and if you don't show it, we're not gonna give you this movie. What if a movie theater decided to do that, or a studio decided to do that? What if they actually decided to do that? And the movie theaters will be at. I'm sure the movie theaters wouldn't necessarily mind, but especially in this day and age, they wouldn't mind because there's always there are news reports at the end of the year that, oh, movie tickets have fallen so and so from last year, or people aren't going out to the movies that often, or people just they would rather wait for the movie to come on a streaming service than go out and pay X amount for a movie ticket and soda and popcorn and whatever, what have you, which is true, and that's the other side of the argument. People don't want to go out to the movies. I know a few people that are like, I only go to the movie theaters like once or twice a year. And to me, it's like, well, what are you talking about? Because, I go to the movies every weekend. As I'm recording this, I'm getting ready to go out to the movies. So it's one of those things where it's just like, it's like, why would you want to probably go out where you have, all these streaming service sites, and not even the big ones, everyone always thinks of like, oh, Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, but you got other ones. You got Vudu, you got Fandango. They do you can rent and buy movies from them as well. You got all these other ones, not just Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu. But yeah, it's like why if there's stuff you haven't never watched or like you missed in theaters and you're like, what, I don't want to deal with a crowd. I don't want to deal with going out, especially if you live in a part of the country where it gets freezing cold and there's snow on the ground and you don't want to leave your house. Yeah, you're not gonna go out to the movie theaters. You're just gonna stay at home and turn something on and that's it. You don't have to waste any money. So yeah, and for those people who are like, it's like, yeah, like I'd just rather stay at home and just watch something on TV. Me, I'm like, no, I want to go out to the movies. I like going out to the movies. I like the experience of sitting down in a massive movie theater and watching a movie on the big screen. I've always been like that. I have always been like that. I will hopefully forever be like that. I love going to the movie theater. I really do. I will spend the money to go out to the movie theater. I mean, tickets are sometimes expensive, and I'm looking at you, AMC, where you're just always constantly raising the prices, even if it's bit by bit, on your concessions. And that's the other thing. I talked to some of my friends. I know one friend, and if he even listens to this podcast, I'm not probably talking about you. I'm talking about the other one. They only go to the movie theaters to watch like the big blockbuster movies. Sometimes they only go to the movie theaters to watch the big Marvel movies, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do, that's great. And there's people out there that only go watch the big drama movies. They only go watch the A24. I just say A24 because I see it right here in front of my outline. But like the drama movies, or like, what? Let's say it. The Irishman by Martin Scorsese, which is going to get a limited theater run before it hits Netflix. It's just, you're going to have both sides of the aisle give the positives and negatives to this thing. I kind of fall in the middle. I can see the positives of it, where it's like, yeah, a lot of things are changing. Netflix is actively trying to, make TV series and movies and stuff like that. Amazon is doing the same thing. HBO Max is going to come out and do the same thing. Disney Plus is doing it. So you have all your Hulu's, buying up stuff so they can, put it on their platform as well. So you got that stuff. You got that. You got the streaming services, the positives. It's like, yeah, take it away because it doesn't really matter. Because people are going to go to the movies whether they like it or not. And some people probably won't even care about it. Some people probably don't even know that the Paramount consent decrees exist. Or even if they're finding out about it, they don't care because it's like, well, it's not really going to affect me. Because it's not. Because if you want to go to the movie, or if you want to go to the movies in general, it doesn't matter what it is, because if you only particularly like to go watch something and it's there playing at your movie theater, you're going to go watch it. It's not going to matter if the next time a big movie comes out and the studio's like, well, you played that, so we're going to give you this, or you didn't play this movie for us, so we're going to take it, somewhere else to the other big competitor. If you want to make the drive out to the other movie theater, I will be honest with you. I live in the Chicagoland area. I live right outside Chicago. I live like 30 minutes outside the city. Maybe probably less. Probably about 20 minutes outside the city. No, I think I always misjudge because I take the expressway sometimes and there's always traffic and construction. So the times always vary. But I live about 20, 30 minutes outside the city of Chicago. In this radius that I have, and I and I remember this because I was talking to a friend of mine, or I was talking to someone on Twitter, and they were like, we only have like one movie theater in our area, and that's like 10 minutes away. I'm like, really? Like, there is at least, and I will guarantee, there is at least, I think it was 15 or 16 movie theaters in a 10-mile radius of my house. And most of them are AMC. The other ones are local company. I think pretty much local companies here in the Chicagoland. I mean, I don't know if anyone listening, if you have Classic Cinemas where you're from. Classic Cinemas, there's a cop car. They found me. No, they were going right by my house. That was weird. Hey, some excitement on the podcast. Yeah, so I have like maybe 10 AMCs in the 10-mile radius of my house. And that includes within, the city. I have about like maybe 3 or 4 other theater chains in that 10-mile radius as well. So I'm always within grasp of movie theaters. And the great thing is that all these movie theaters they pretty much almost play the same stuff. And if something's not playing at one particular movie theater, I can just go to the other one. So for me, it doesn't necessarily affect me too much because I can go to these kind of small theaters, and sometimes it takes a while for one movie to hit a particular theater for whatever reason, and that's fine. And I can wait. I can wait for that movie. And it's usually like smaller stuff, so like The Farewell or The Lighthouse, ironically both A24 movies, or some other smaller movie recently, and I can't remember what it was, but it's the smaller movies that are coming out that always hit the movie theaters late. This doesn't necessarily affect me too much because I'm one of those people that goes to the movie theaters no matter what. But I'm always looking for the behind the scenes stuff too, so it's just one of those things I wanted to inform you guys about. So I don't know how you guys feel, but again, you can see the positives where it's like, yeah, it's, streaming services, obviously. And the movie theaters now have more than one screen and stuff like this changes. And sometimes people won't even notice because if you don't go to movies, then you're not going to notice. Whereas the negatives, it is like, what if one day a movie studio is like, no, you have to play this movie so we can give you that other. You have to play this so we can give you, Star Wars or something. I only pick Star Wars because that's the next big movie I can think of that came out, Frozen or whatever. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys some light on that. And obviously, if there's an update to this story, if they don't pass it for whatever reason, or they do, or something drastic happens, I'll drop it right here. If not, that is your movie news items of the week. Let me know what you guys thought of all the movie news items, wherever you want to tell me. So let's move on to this week's movie releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Alright, so we have quite a few movies coming out this weekend, all different. Let's talk about our limited releases. We only have one, and that is Dark Waters. A corporate defense attorney takes on an environment lawsuit against a chemical company that exposes a lengthy history of pollution. I believe the movie's inspired by real events, because it sounds like it, obviously. But what I'm trying to get at is that it's inspired by a particular event, but I don't know. I forgot to look that up. Nonetheless, the movie stars Mark Ruffalo, Anne Hathaway, William Jackson Harper, Bill Camp, Victor Garber, Bill Pullman, Jesus, and Tim Robbins. So I saw the trailer for this once. I think I saw like a couple commercials on TV recently. So it's a limited release. So just check your local theaters. Maybe check that one theater that's always playing limited releases. If we're talking about the Paramount, this consent decree. So there's that. All right. So the wide releases this week, we have 3 of them. So the first one is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. It's based on a true story of the real-life friendship between Fred Rogers, played by Tom Hanks, and a journalist, played by Matthew Rhys in the movie. This movie looks like it's going to make us cry. Because were you crying, almost crying, when you saw that trailer for the first time? I know I did. I mean, I didn't cry. I felt something. Obviously, I felt it in my throat, but that didn't sound right. But A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. That's your first wide release this week. Your second wide release this week is 21 Bridges. Thrust into the citywide manhunt for a duo of cop killers, NYPD detective Andre Davis, played by Chadwick Boseman, begins to uncover a massive conspiracy that links his fellow police officers to a criminal empire and must decide who is hunting who, and who is actually hunting him. During the manhunt, Manhattan is completely locked down for the first time in history. No exit or entry into the island, including all 21 bridges. Hey, that's the name of the movie. The movie co-stars Sienna Miller, Taylor Kitsch, Stephen James, Keith David, and J.K. Simmons. Some early reviews have been relatively mixed with not so positive reviews. Some of them are somewhat negative, but I'm going to go watch it. I've been interested in this since I first saw the trailer for it and since I saw the cast for it. That's pretty impressive. I mean, come on, look at that cast. And you got Chadwick Boseman in there. I mean, he's a star on the rise. Not just Black Panther. I mean, just in general, he's a star on the rise. And you got a great cast in there. Sienna Miller's in there. Man, she's sometimes hit or miss, but she's pretty good when she's allowed to be. Taylor Kitsch is in there. Stephen James from oh my God, why am I forgetting that? If Beale Street Could Talk. Well, I don't know why I forgot the name of the movie. And then J.K. Simmons is in there. Obviously, Keith David's there as well. It looks great. It looks like a solid little action thriller. So reviews haven't been necessarily too kind for the movie, but hey, I'm gonna go watch it because, like I mentioned, I go to the movies. And then we have Frozen 2 coming out this weekend, which is gonna be everywhere. So if you're a parent, prepare yourself. If you haven't prepared yourself already, Frozen 2, Anna, voiced by once again Kristen Bell. Elsa, once again voiced by Idina Menzel. Kristoff, once again voiced by Jonathan Groff. And Olaf, of course, once again voiced by Josh Gad. And Sven leave Arendelle to travel to an ancient autumn-based forest of an enchantment land. They set out to find the origin of Elsa's powers in order to save their kingdom. The voice cast also includes Evan Rachel Wood and Sterling K. Brown. It's Frozen. You're gonna go watch it. If you're a parent, or if you're have little nieces or nephews and you always take them to the movies, this is what you're watching this weekend. There's no going about it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're going to watch it, and you're gonna have that soundtrack blaring in your car for the rest of the year and for like half of the new year until something else comes out that takes it over. But you're gonna watch it. I'm gonna go watch it. I mean, I have a niece, but she's older, so she can make her own decisions. I'm still gonna go watch it because you know what? I like these movies. I like Walt Disney. I like the Walt Disney animation anyway. And I saw the first one, and you know what? I didn't mind the first one. Is it a perfect movie? No, of course it's not. Is it targeted toward kids? Of course it is. But I'm still gonna go watch it because I like the pretty colors. I don't know why I said that. So yeah, those are your wide releases this week. Frozen 2, 21 Bridges, and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Your limited release this week is, once again, Dark Waters. And that is it for the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Before I send you on your way, though, I do have one little thing. I probably should have mentioned this at the top of the podcast, but I'll mention it here. Next week's podcast is going to be coming out very early. Next week's podcast will be recorded on Tuesday with the hopes of releasing it later that day or even on Wednesday. So I just want to let you know because I think I did this last year or 2 years ago. I forgot to look it up, but I did this before where I treated the podcast before Thanksgiving as a kind of a Q&A podcast. So I talked about some of the movie news items that came out in those 2 days that the podcast comes out, or before I started recording, and I talk about, of course, the movies that are coming out in theaters that weekend. I do the usual thing that I do, but then I always set time aside on the podcast to answer your questions. So I am putting it open for you guys if you want to ask me some questions. It can be about anything. It doesn't have to be movie related. If you want to ask me some movie questions, great. If you want to ask me some nerd questions, great. If you want to ask me some personal questions, if you're a first time listener, you're like, hey, I want to know more about this guy, ask away. The quota of whatever you want. That's not the right word. What word am I looking for? I don't even know what word I'm looking for now. English major. I don't know what word I'm looking for. If whatever it is, it doesn't. As long as it's not too personal, it's fine. You can ask me anything, and I'll answer it here on the podcast for you guys. It's just a fun little thing that we do, just because it's going to be a short week. I'll probably be away from my computer most of the time. Maybe, I don't know, for the holidays, with my family. Obviously, I will be away. That's very failed attempt of a joke. But yeah, I just, I did it a couple years. I did it sometime. I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago. But if you want to ask me a question, it could be anything. Let me know. You can do it. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can ask me a question down there. Leave it in the comments. It would be great. If you want, there's the handles for everything for Instagram and Twitter. If you want to send me a direct message or tweet at me or something, I will find it. And I will read it on the podcast. It's just a fun little, give back for anyone listening out there. And if you're the only person that sends questions, I will answer them because, that's just the way it works. So, and if only one person sends me questions, then you're going to be the spotlight of the podcast, my friend. So yeah, I'm opening up. So you have until Tuesday of next week. That is, I should probably look up the date for that. You have until Tuesday the 26th. In the morning, Tuesday 26 in the morning, to send me your questions, because I will most likely be recording the podcast in the afternoon, like mid-afternoon, maybe maybe early evening. So yeah, that's what's gonna happen next week for the podcast wise. And then of course after the holidays we'll come back and we'll go back at it. Just a few weeks. Only a few weeks of regular movie news before we get to the end of the year, and we talk about our favorite movies of the year, our least favorite movies of the year, and all that stuff. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. So yeah, that's it for the podcast. Thank you guys so much. Again, you can find everything that you need down below in the comments or in the description / I always do that in the description / show notes here. Maybe I should just start putting in the comments in the description / show notes area. Links to the Instagram, to Twitter, to everywhere else. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please leave me a rating and review. If you just want to leave me a rating, that's fine too. You don't want to go in and start writing stuff, that's fine. Leave me a rating. I hope you appreciate that. If you're listening to this on YouTube, subscribe, like, or dislike. No, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Be honest. Just be honest. Just be honest. Leave me a comment and stuff like that. And if you're listening to this on Stitcher, hello. We're still pretty brand new to the platform, so hello to all you Stitcher fans listening out there. And that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Send in your questions, please. And I will see you guys next week. I won't see you guys. I mean, you'll hear me. All right, let's end it. Thank you, guys. Be good people. Have a safe, fun weekend. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!